Hello, and welcome to Bite Size Legal, where we tackle legal issues one bite at a time. My name is Drew Jenkins, and I'm an attorney licensed in the states of Georgia and Alabama. And today, we're going to take a quick bite out of executing documents properly. Now, this may seem like a strange topic. You just sign your name and you're done. And unfortunately, it can be more complicated than that. When signing legal documents, it's important that we understand who is signing and in what capacity they're signing. Now, lately, I've been getting back a lot of title searches that I've been reviewing, as well as drafting documents, and we've been having some issues recently about improper execution, which can cause problems in title, and if we don't do it correctly, will cause problems in title in the future. And so this is about knowing how you need to sign a legal document. The first thing to keep in mind is if you think back to our previous lessons, we were talking about entities and entity formation, and that an entity, be it a corporation, a limited liability company, or a limited partnership, is something separate from you. And in order for the government to respect that division, that separation between the entity's property and your property, you needed to follow certain rules. For corporations, it's referred to as the corporate formalities. Well, as part of that, you also need to make sure that you're signing documents in a way that we know that you're not signing in your personal individual capacity, but you're signing in your capacity as X as it relates to the entity. So especially in deeds, what I've been seeing is you have an LLC that is the owner, which is typical these days, and you just have the owner's signature. There is no discussion of ABC LLC signed by Joe Smith, comma, manager, sole member, owner. No ABC LLC by Joe Smith, next line, it's member, manager, member, sole member. Just give me a capacity and let me know what it is. In the state of Georgia for corporations, it can be even more difficult. State statute requires that anytime a corporation acts, it has to be attested or authenticated by another officer of the corporation. That role is typically going to be performed by either the vice president or the secretary. Now, of course, in your bylaws, you can set the attesting or authenticating officer to be the one you choose. So when you have a conveyance of land and it's signed by a corporation, right, that would be an Inc. At the end of your name, you need to make sure there's actually two corporate signatures. Now, we all know at this point that there have to be two witnesses to the person signing the deed, but you may not be aware that in Georgia you also need two corporate signatures. One is going to be the authorized signer, which is typically going to be your president, right, or your CEO. But you also need a second one to attest or to authenticate that. It's no different than with your corporate minutes, right? Your corporate minutes are going to be signed typically by the vice president or the president, and then it's going to be signed by the secretary attesting or authenticating it. It's the same thing here. Another thing to look out for is if you do on your legal documents, you have like ABC LLC or you have XYZ Incorporated, and then you just sign your name. Well, that still doesn't tell me why you have the right to sign your name, right? Are you signing on behalf of the company or are you just signing? And the answer is I don't know, which is why you need to always make sure that you're putting on there your capacity, right? You might be the sole member of an LLC. You might be the sole shareholder of a corporation, right? You could or probably are the manager, you're the member, you're the president, right? Whatever your capacity is, you need to tell us what it is. And your capacity in some cases may be even more complicated than that, right? You could be operating under a power of attorney given to you by the company. That should also be filed of record, so we have another document signed by someone we know can sign on behalf of the company, right? You need to make sure that you're keeping it clean in your signatures. Another thing to point out is for those of you that are attempt to be a tad more sophisticated, or may be, and you begin to layer your entities, right? So someone told you it was a good idea to have a holding company, and then you have operating companies, which, depending on what you're doing, that could be excellent advice. Not always, though. you need to make sure that you're signing correctly on that. You as an individual are probably not the manager or the member of the operating company, right? You most likely are the manager, member, or owner of the holding company, which in turn is the owner, manager, or member of the operating company. So those kinds of signatures are going to need to be ABC Holding LLC is our parent, right? And then you have XYZ LLC as your subsidiary, or as your child company, or as your operating company. So the way that you'll sign on that is in the case of deeds and conveyances, right? You will be XYZ LLC because it actually owns the land, or it's the one granting the mortgage, right? By ABC Holding LLC because that's actually your manager or your member. You can do a comma, or you can do, an excellent new line, it's. And then tell me the capacity. Why does ABC Holding LLC have the right to sign on behalf of XYZ Operating LLC? But that still doesn't get us there because we still need your signature at some point, right? Everything still has to be done by human hands. So you're going to do yet another line below that has your name, or a signature line where you will sign your name, and below it will be Joe Smith, comma, manager, right? So that way we have our clear line of authority for signing. So just keep in mind as you're signing documents, if you do not intend to personally bind yourself, that means individually liable, do not sign just your name to the document. Make sure that you're stating you're signing on behalf of the entity and the capacity that you're signing on behalf of the entity. Hope you found this useful, if not at least enjoyable, and I look forward to seeing you next week.